Okay, my guest will start off with that subject matter. Mr. Segun Shomi is a former spokesperson for PDP Presidential Campaign Council, as well as Dr. Omar Ado, who is a member of the PDP. They both join us from our studios in Abuja. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us on the program today.
Good morning, team.
Morning.
Okay, let me start with you, Dr. Ado. Well, this, of course, there are mixed feelings. There are different strokes for different folks in the same party on this subject matter. So today, we expect the court to give a decision because it's not the first or the second time, so who knows. So let's start with getting your impression about this matter, because we've heard people members of the party who have said, look, well, let Mr. Secondus sheath his sword, just take it easy, calm down, you won't die if, you just come back to the fold. Party has decided. So, do you share the thoughts?
Thank you very much, Chamberlain. The case before the court, actually before Nigerians, is a case of justice, of rule of law, and of honesty. A political party is supposed to be an organization that is bound by rules. When you don't follow the rules, then you alienate a whole lot of people, because the only thing that binds us all together as members of a political organization is the Constitution, is the rule. So when the rule and the Constitution are put aside, then the party will have problem. And that is the source of the problem that PDP has today. They have tried to remove Uche Secondus as the national chairman of the party for some ulterior reasons. Everybody has a reason for one thing or the other, but you must do your thing within the rules. And when they did not get it through the rules, they now went to the court and get the court to lend its support to their agenda. And therefore, you should know, one, Secondus didn't take the party to court. It is those who want to rule the country by subterfuge that went to the court and sued Secondus and then removed Secondus. So Secondus has just appealed against this apparent injustice. We must not allow the disparaging of rule of law, of injustice, and of dishonesty to be entrenched in our system. It will destroy the system. It is the reason why the system has fallen as it is today.
So, Mr. Shomi, he suggests that the party is at fault in this case.
I think I have been more agonized by asking myself what makes the democratic experiment in Nigeria so predictably cumbersome. I take the view that, yes, political players, by its very nature, will try to take advantage of every lacuna or every loophole in the system. But I would expect that a party in opposition will be more concerned with giving itself the necessary stability to be able to show to the people that while it's in opposition, it has reformed itself, its own process to such a degree that it can now be reasonably expected to be able to be different from the way it's been in the past and why the people rejected it. In this particular case, when it started, I had admonished that there were three options that we should consider very well. The first option was that if we could look at the issues broadly, perhaps we may find out that in a bid to solve a minor slight, we were going to create a bigger catastrophe before us. The second option was that I had admonished that, look, there comes a time where people must make sacrifices in the overall interest of any organization, be it a party, a country, a family. And then the third was that perhaps at the end of the day, the courts will have to help us determine what is the appropriate way of doing things. And I must say very frankly that it's quite painful to watch PDP stumble around the same things over and over. In its history, it has acquired the notoriety of not being able to allow its executive committee complete their tenure. Sometimes they say it's this issue and that issue, and they do not even have the painstaking calmness to set whatever issue they're putting through their own process. So we'll have to wait. Those who say, why did Secondus respond in court? I think those are the ones who really don't understand how democracy works or how human rights and people's rights to say, no, I have not been fairly treated well. But for it to be happening at such a cutting-edge period where less than 24 hours to a convention, we're still awaiting a court order or a judgment or a pronouncement of court, it takes you back to the inglorious era of the Alimadu Sheriff and all of the things that we went through to exit that. And you would have hoped that if the party and some of the personalities that are playing, if you like, the devil over this case, they would have learned from that and they would have been probably more, they must have had the ability to say, okay, this is the issue, let us sidestep it. Why will a political party as old as the PDP not have enough structures within its own organization to check some of the things that have now come to be called excesses? If they be financial graft, why do you not have a financial accounting and auditing framework that makes that kind of nonsense impossible? If it is excessive abuse of office, why do you not have your own internal disciplinary actions that set up the flag? There are many reasons why one is a little bit unhappy. But I must add very quickly, you only need to look at what's going on in the other political party before you become really sad. And you get sad because you ask, what is it about the African, or at least in this case the Nigerian, that makes it extremely difficult for us to calmly understand that the democratic ideal is what must be protected? You know why? Because once you start to run democracy, you really cannot realistically expect to bat a government that is going to do what the society wants if you are not having a democratic posture that serves as a first safeguard to that democracy. So for me, it will be interesting to see how the court rules. I would just admonish and beg that all parties to this activity must understand that it has taken many years for us to get to where we are, first as a democratic country now, then as PDP, and that there is no grandstanding gain for anybody if this is where we found ourselves. But all in all, I think when you compare it, you will see that it's not just the PDP, it's the way we have allowed the democracy to grow. And I profile
well, Mr. Shomi, you have indeed spoken about the effect of this on democracy at large in Nigeria. If I could just come in now, Mr. Shomi. So you have also, stretched this to its overall impact on democracy on Nigeria, looking at it from a wider perspective. So let me take this back to Dr. Ado. And first, let's talk about this maxim that says that no individual is bigger than a party. I know that time and again that has been said in your party and even in other parties. So when you say someone should be a party man or someone is a party man, essentially, and you always hear when people are selected, you hear them say, well, this is a party man, a fantastic party man who sticks to the ideals of the party, who, of course, I imagine that means that this individual is not trying to be bigger than the party. So in this case, when you look at the whole proceedings, how things have gone, the party saying, well, when I talk about the party, the major party organ saying, we have slated the convention, and this seems to be just an individual trying to pull the party back. Would you still say then that this is an individual not trying to be bigger than the party?
No, certainly not. It is not the issue of individual. It is the issue of core principles. It's the issue of principles of justice, principle of rule of law, principle of honesty. These are the core principles that have been trashed by those who want to take over the party by any means. It is not about Secondus. Secondus is just an individual. But when attack these core principles of democracy, then you put the entire democracy at risk. And that is what we are talking about. We cannot accept to play a game that has no rules, to play a game that is unjust, to play a game that does not believe in the core values that set up this game. Democracy is a game, politics is a game, but they are all bound by rules. So this is it. Let us not reduce it into an issue of individuals. Personally, I have gone to court against the PDP 11 times. Over the period of 10 years, I took the PDP 11 times to the court. 5 times at the court of at the High Court, 3 times at the Court of Appeal, and 3 times at the Supreme Court, all on the issue of injustice, on the issue of disparaging rule of law, on the issue of dishonesty. So when a party is endemic in this kind of things, you know, the party kills itself. Now, my colleague here made reference of Alimodu Sharif case. The same people who brought in Alimodu Sharif against wise counsel, that you shouldn't bring Alimodu Sharif, he will only come and destroy this party. These are the characteristics of this guy, so don't do it. They insisted that they know everybody in this country. They insisted that because they are holding public office and they are the, what you call the oligarchs of the party, that they will do as they please. And they went and brought Alimodu Sharif, and it caused us a lot of problem. In fact, I can assure you, it is the Alimodu Sharif case that was centrally responsible for PDP to lose the 2019 elections. And they have not learned any lesson on that. This same group went again to remove Secondus 40 months before his term. We have no problem of removing Secondus. The political party has no problem of removing Secondus, but the political party has stipulated how
you alluding that
leadership
because some days ago, we've been told that this is a decision taken by the national organs of the party. So it wasn't a unilateral or just a certain group's decision, that different organs of the party acceded to that, and they have agreed to move on from that.
Chamberlain, I don't want us to look at the substance of this case, but if you look at chapter 10 of the PDP constitution, which deals with discipline, it has stated clearly how a national leadership will be dealt with. It has stated that only NEC and only NEC alone can remove or discipline a national leader. But you can't go to a ward and then get the ward to discipline him. Then you come to local government and say, local government, you know, affirm this discipline, and then you take this thing to court, and you take it to court as ex parte. Ex parte is where the court will hear only one side without hearing the other side, and then take a decision until the other side is being heard. Then this ex parte order now became a full judgment. Don't forget that.
Let me just put this in.
Chief Justice of the Federation.
Right. If I could just put this in, recall that the same appeal court struck out that suit challenging his suspension. This is the second leg we're waiting for today, but first it had struck out that suit that was challenging his suspension.
I'm not aware of that.
That was on Tuesday.
I'm not aware of the Court of Appeal. No. The Court of Appeal did not do that on Tuesday. You got it wrong.
Okay, so what did the court do then?
What the court did on Tuesday, as the lawyer just said, was that, okay, all those who want to come in, and then to have served your, the court gave 48 hours, 24 to this, 24 to that, and then gave 12 o'clock that you come and then let us listen to you. And that was what happened.
So that was for the conduct of the convention. Dr. Ado, what you're talking about is for the conduct of the convention. Don't forget that there were 2 issues. One was for his suspension and then the convention.
About the issue of the convention. You see,
but we just listened to his lawyer saying that he wasn't trying to scuttle the convention. We just listened to the lawyer saying he was just asking that the convention be held off while this issue is determined. We listened to him.
Certainly, that is what happened. If the court was to take the decision after the convention, like say on Monday, Tuesday, then the court would have now determined on the issue of injunction, restraining the convention. But the court said, we are going to determine it before the date of the convention. So the issue of determining on the issue of the injunction, does not even arise.
So there are two issues here, Dr. Ardo, and I don't want us to mix it up. So there's the issue around his suspension, which I referenced, and there's the issue of the convention, which we expect will be decided today. But regarding his suspension, I am telling you that on Tuesday, the Court of Appeal sitting in Port Harcourt dismissed an application challenging the suspension of Mr. Uche Secondus from the PDP.
So you are telling me that Uche Secondus' appeal against his suspension was dismissed, correct? Is that what you are saying? If this is what you are saying, then what is the court going to determine today? If they have dismissed this application of his suspension, the court cannot sit down today to determine on the issue of injunction, because that will not have even aroused whatsoever. So this is the situation. I don't want us to mix in. I was not in the court myself, so I do not know for sure what happened, but I've been very close in the whole matter, and I know what happened. We've been monitoring it, and we know that this statement that you have said is substantially not really correct.
And Dr. Ardo, you said you're not in court and you're not quite clear, and still you say it's not correct. But maybe Mr. Shomi, I just told you what played out in court. But Mr. Shomi, perhaps you have, I mean, you clearly were not in court as well, but what is your opinion on interpretation of this? Because it appears interpretation is different.
I'll put it to you this way. My concern is not exactly how the case is going. No. I'll be more interested in what the very learned judges of the Court of Appeal finally decide. But in the meantime, my worry is this. Shall a future president or chairman of a political party sitting in his party office in Abuja and doing the work of a political party spend all of the time in that office worrying about how activities in his ward is going to such a degree that a collective endorsement and vote and enthronement done from all of the numerous thousands of wards in Nigeria that accumulated in a national convention, shall all of the intentions of the party members and the collegiate that install an executive, shall it be reduced to the recalcitrant activity of a ward chairman sitting in just one small ward of the country who will say, I have suspended the almighty chairman of a political party, and that would then be the basis by which a political party will lose its leadership. Anybody who loves democracy and understands democracy must be uncomfortable with that. And I put it very firmly that I am very uncomfortable, because you will create a precedence where a national chairman will not be able to sit in his office and run around the entire country to make the party stable, but will now spend all of his time managing the dynamics in one very infinitely small part of that whole, and that would then be the basis by which democracy will grow. No, that can't be right. There are laid down procedure in the
just one second,
the
Mr.
constitution
Shomi.
of the country, the constitution of our party.
Yes, just one second. There are a number of issues that you have raised. My apologies. You've raised a number of issues, especially concerning the role of an institution, which is a whole political party, as opposed to the individuals that are playing it. Both of you seem to be on the same page as to the fact that the issues are more personal than institutional. And you've also referenced the fact that political party playing generally in the country seems to be going in the same way. It would seem then that the power is only left for those who play the politics, only for their interests, as opposed to the interests of the people that they're supposed to be serving for getting into the systems in the first place. Does that mean that the people are helpless?
Well, that's why you will see I said a democratic party is the first safeguard for democracy. The ideal that we call democracy imagines that people will join political parties because political parties are organizations governed by rule created by law. Therefore, within the rule book of a political party lies all the means and ways of getting its activities administered. In this case, we're talking about the PDP. That is what it ought to be. Now, because it has interference with humans, human beings of their very nature will try to do all sorts of things to take advantage. But no matter the advantage that they are trying to take on a political party, they must be guided first by the rule, then they must be guided by the law, then they must be guided by what exactly is the ideal of a democracy. And I say again, forget the personalities that is involved today. Some other personalities were involved yesterday, day before yesterday, and 3 circles ago. Why should a political party that was created in 1998, formed government in 1999, ran it for 16 years, lost election in 2015, stayed in opposition for the number of years it has stayed in opposition, and still comes to the public space with this kind of extremely irritating system that suggests that it does not even understand what its role is in a democracy? And I said, the agony for me is that you look at the alternative political party and you see them not even trying to be better. At best, they are running their party on some kind of caretaker that has lasted on for too long. You look at the Congress that
like,
done there,
well, it would seem like the people, you have been judge and jury on this case, it would sound like, because, I mean, if the opposition, just a second, if the opposition was doing any better, I don't know if people would have preferred the party in power now as opposed to the PDP, which you also mentioned. But let me take this to Dr. Ado. You also spoke about the institutional challenges in the political party. The question on my mind right now is, if the rules are there and they are strong, how come the rules that govern an institution like such an important opposition party not being followed, yet the party is still struggling to be an opposition party?
Thank you. That is the problem. You see, it is not about the rules. It is about the operators of the rules. The rules are there. If we had followed the rules, we wouldn't be where we are today.
Dr. Ado,
the rules have always existed for the benefit of all members.
Just a second.
But the rules are never obeyed.
Does that mean that the system is not strong enough to challenge the individuals that are taking advantage?
Now, the best place for you, if you try to get the rules followed and the protests fail to do so, the only place for you to go is to go to the courts. And that is what people like us did all this while. You see, while these iniquities were being done, especially done to individuals like me who were not holding public offices, now they have done it to somebody who is holding public office. They have done it to the chairman of the party itself. So the office of the chairman of the party itself would have been compromised if this thing continues. And that is what the PDP has been suffering of. So those operators who operate the rules are the ones who don't obey the rules. And it is not just on the party issue. I will give you a typical example, and it is so disheartening. If you look at the provision of the Nigerian Constitution, section 68, subsection 1G, on the issue of national legislators, the Constitution says where a national legislator who is a member of a political party is elected into a legislative office and he crosses over to another political party before the end of the term for which he was elected, he was to step down. He was to step down from his seat as a legislator. But subsection 2 of the Constitution states that it is the leader of the House that will now effect this is stepping down. That is to say, the leader of the House, either the Senate President or the Speaker, will now write to INEC and say, INEC, this guy was in this political party and he crossed to this political party, and that there was no any division in his political party, and based on the provision of the Constitution, he ought to vacate his seat. So we are writing you to please come up with a timetable and elect somebody. But did the Senate, in my state, Adamawa State, A senator left PDP and moved to APC. It doesn't matter because I'm PDP. It could be any political party. But did the Senate President invoke the provision of the Constitution? No, the Senate President did not do so. Why? Because it is the political party of the Senate President that benefited by this cross-carpeting. So what you have happen here is that the Constitution, provision of the Constitution of Nigeria has been politicized. And when you politicize law, you have destroyed the system. We have seen it in the House of Representatives. We have seen it in the House of Assembly in Zafara. We have seen it in the House of Assembly in Cross River. We have seen it in the House of Assembly in Anambra lately. None of them has left the political parties, left their seats after crossing over. And there was no qualification of the position of the Constitution was never met. So it is not just the political party, it's the entire operators. Where political
there are many who think that
crashed with rule of law.
Political parties got the country to where it is today because they are the ones who were in the saddle making all of these laws, and that's why the country, as you used the word struggling, will be struggling in getting certain things right. But let's talk about perhaps a little wider implications for this, internal democracy within political parties. So both of you have been there over time. I know that in those parties, they will always tell them, well, if the party takes a decision, if you're a loyal party man, you have to accept it and move forward. And that's why they say, don't take the party to court. Both parties incidentally seem to be strong on that one. So give us your recommendations. Let me start with you, Dr. Ado, briefly, so we can also bring in Mr. Shome on the same matter. What would you gentlemen suggest? What kind of steps would you like us to see put in place to ensure that internal democracy within political parties, doesn't matter any party now, is really strong such that the best candidates can come forward?
Now, I have two suggestions. One for the political party, that if the courts are strong. Now, the court, to me, the court is like the spinal cord. The court is to the society what the spinal cord is to the human being. If the court is compromised, then the society collapses. If the spinal cord of an individual is injured, the individual collapses. So if the court will be strong, if today, perchance, the court rules in Secondus' favor, I can assure you tomorrow such thing will not happen again because they know that there is a court there. But if the courts don't, and we know what happens in the political field, they will commit an act of impunity deliberately and say go to court because they think that they can go to court and compromise the court. And once the court is compromised, the court will not do what is right, then that is the end of it. Then the second suggestion, which I have made a proposal for the amendment of the Constitution on the issue of these legislators that I said, is that let us remove the powers of effecting the vacation of seats of a defective legislator from the leadership of the House and return it to the party. If the sponsoring party is the one that has powers, if, for example, PDP is the one that has powers, to arrive to INEC and tell INEC that our member has moved out, then no member will move out, and the party will be very much strong, and no member of the party will feel strong enough to.
We'll hear you on that one.
So these are the two suggestions.
Yeah, but just to add a little bit before I go to Mr. Shome, when you talk about the courts, I don't think that if the court rules in favor of Mr. Secondus in this matter can be a yardstick to determine how certain things or the spine will be fixed. No, it's wider than that because how are judges appointed in the first place? Those are fundamental issues. Why do political parties always insist on putting their persons in certain positions in judges? How do they survive with that? What about their remuneration? How do they draw their salaries? Is it directly from source? Those are fundamental issues that parties make sure that judiciary is dependent upon any executive, either the center or the subnational. Those are some fundamental challenges that need to be addressed if we need to talk about the independence of the judiciary. So with due respect, I don't think this particular case will have a huge implication to that extent. I stand corrected, though. But Mr. Shomi,
okay.
yeah, I get you.
Let me quickly
no, before you do that, we're looking at time, yes. Let's just bring him to Shomi. Maybe we'll come back to you if we still have some time. Give us your own suggestions as to strengthening internal democracy within political parties on a wider scale.
As I looked at the whole space, I began to ask myself, why has it continued like this, and why do we not see even anything different in the other party? And I became convinced that human beings are creatures of habits. And among the habits that people copy are the habits and the attitude of their leaders. And I convinced myself reasonably that it is the fact that we started this democratic journey first with Olusegun Obasanjo, a military man, who, with due respect, would not have understood what democracy really is all about. And then again, when we had a second opportunity with Muhammadu Buhari, who is also another military officer, who truly will know, and people will copy them. Why am I saying this? What I see to be at the center of this challenge is that certain individuals at different levels have appropriated to themselves the right to create political party in their own image to serve their own agenda. And for people who have presidents who we say is the leader of the party, then maybe they have someone that can stop them in their stride. In the case of the PDP that is not in power at the federal level, it means that it must not contend with the recalcitrant attitude of governors who are probably in our own case just about 13, who would then appropriate to themselves under some very warped thinking the totality of the opinion and the know-how of a political party, some of whom have not even stayed long in the party compared to people like us who have been here bleeding for this party forever and ever. So I think the first thing we need to first of all understand is that it's time to change the idea that an elected member, however highly placed, is greater than the whole of the party. Therefore, I'm saying clearly, the era of the president is leader of the party has to go. The era of governors are the leaders of the party in their state has to go, so that we can then have political parties and their organs who gave birth to these governors and president being the custodian of the principles and the ideals of their party. That will help, number one. Number two, I think that we have gotten to a point where we must ask ourselves the fundamental right of association that we allow people to jump from one party to the other. Perhaps it's time for us to review it now. What do I mean? Political parties don't have names of individuals on their ballot. Therefore, a ticket must be considered to belong to a political party. And if anything happens to that individual, then the political party who had garnered the vote ab initio must be allowed to do a replacement of that fellow. I think something in that order. And then maybe a third one will be for the electorate to calmly punish those who make it a habit to jump up and down.
Okay, because I was going to ask, in all of this, none of you mentioned the electorate, but yes, you have. So that is an interesting part because power belongs to the people. So we need to get that. But it's not going to drop on a lot of the people anyway. People have got to be up and doing and ensure that they do what they have to do. So, gentlemen, Dr. Ado, unfortunately, we couldn't come back to take that submission of yours, but I appreciate both of you for coming in today. So we'll look to see what happens in Port Harcourt today. So, Mr. Segun Shomi and Dr. Omar Ado, thank you both for coming on today. Welcome back. Well, that airport happens to be a bone of contention. We'll tell you why in a moment, but let's introduce two gentlemen joining us to weigh in on this. We've got Chido Obidiegu, who is an Abga chieftain, and then we've got Honorable Victor Afam Ogene, who is a former member of the House of Representatives. He is also Director of Media for Senator Andeba. Gentlemen, good morning, and thank you for joining us on this program today.
Well,
Mr. Obidiegu, can you hear me?
I responded to your good morning, and I said I would reply good morning, but I'm wondering whether this morning is good in Anambra State based on some of the information we are
Okay,
getting.
we need to establish first if you can hear us. But, well, now we're on, there seems to be this bone of contention about the airport. So we understand that your party, ABGA, is not happy about what they may have heard concerning a certain directive about the commissioning of this airport. So could you start by shedding light on what is the matter at the moment?
Well, I'm able to say to you that we have His Excellency Chief Willie Madabro Chukwuobiano, the Executive Governor of Anambra State, who started very well and has endeared himself to Anambra people. He promised Anambra people that he's going to focus in governance, which he has done, and that he's going to finish strong. So many things have happened in Anambra State that are applaudable. Now we have gotten to a point where he's about to finish strong with this airport. Airport that over 3 billion naira has been expended on, about to be commissioned. This airport will have the approval of NCAA from the design to construction to a time when the test run was done by an airport, aircraft landing there, airpiece, and about 2-3 other aircraft. We have the imprimatur of FAN. Now we're about to commission the airport, and we are hearing that based on security reasons, that the airport will not be commissioned. It is mind-boggling. It is actually as if in Anambra State today that, I mean,
the airport, could you be categorical and specific? Who says the airport will not be commissioned?
Well, we have it that the National Security Advisor has advised NCAA that this event should not hold based on security reasons, and one begins to wonder.
Okay, just a minute. Do you have any communication? Have you seen any communication from the NCAA about this matter to support what you've said?
Well, we have our ears on the ground, and you know, in Anambra State, we are very careful here. I can assure you that we know what is about to happen, and because we know that there are people in Anambra State who want to ensure that ABGA does not have its deserved victory in the next election, that do everything possible, to hinder the success of ABGA. So, have it on good authority.
Let's equally give Honorable Ogene some time to equally respond to what you have said. So, Honorable Ogene, so is this the case because he's alluding political reasons rather than security reasons for what they hear? Okay, we understand that the connection has just gone off, but we'll try and get that reconnected and get him back on such that we could get his perspective on the matter. So as you may have heard that, Mr. Bidego says that they've got their ears close to the ground. But Honorable Ogene, can you hear me now?
Yes, good morning, Chamberlain.
Okay, were you able to hear what Mr. Bidego was saying, that this appears to be a lot more political than security reasons, asking that they don't go ahead with the commissioning of the airports in Oka tomorrow?
Chamberlain, I listened to your introduction of this topic, and the report did say towards the end that the governor will commission the airport before he leaves office. I don't know if the governor is billed to leave office in October or November of 2021. The whole issue revolves around ABGA's propaganda. It's a government of propaganda run by propagandists for the good people of Anambra, and they're fed up. From when this administration started, we heard about Ugu Export, $5 million investment funds coming into the state. Anambra Rice. 1,000-kilometer propaganda stuff. And today, 2 weeks ago, the governor said the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority for license to begin commercial flights at the airport. Telling us, they're not showing us my candidation. I don't know why this issue should be so politicized. Aviation is a technical aspect which no one should play politics with. You must get everything right. This same airport building had started during his second tenure, and if it's taking him 4 years to complete the airport, in April, it was 60% completion rate, but they rushed to bring in a flight. Until today, I can tell you the airport has not even been cleaned. And the certification, let them show us if they have certification. Aviation is on the exclusive legislative list. It's a federal matter. I don't know why the ABGA government is insistent on playing politics with it. The SSG only on September 17th did say in November they are certain that the airport will begin commercial operations. Why the question now is why the rush to commission it even before the November they spoke about?
Question directly to Mr. Obidiego. So, Mr. Obidiego, could you respond to that, please?
Honorable I have a lot of respect for you, but when you begin to make comments that are reprehensible, I begin to wonder.
Also, he put a direct question. So, can we just address the issues that are in question at the moment? Okay, well, seems to be, the connection doesn't seem to be that great, but I would like him to just respond pointedly to the question. We'll just, as much as possible, stay away from our second personalities. Well, Honorable, again, it appears as though, if we don't get his connection right, but he just thinks that, well, clearly...
I can have the time to myself.
Well, he thinks that it's your party that is playing the politics in this case. He thinks that this is political. It may be on the exclusive list, but it is a political interference on their part. That's the way they see it.
The question is how? They play politics with everything, and they seek to drag my candidate into every of their propaganda. People go to Brunikebi to get court orders. They call Senator Andiuba. They go to Ororo in Delta State, they call Senator Andiuba. But when they go to Ibadan to get a positive judgment, they fail to tell Nigerians that they went as far as Ibadan. They use cattle to play politics. Their candidate is on tape asking people not to vote for people who bring in cattle, whereas stray cattle are mostly found in Anambra, around Aguleri area, where the governor hails from. It is the same governor who infamously...
We understand we're having back. Pardon me. We do have Mr. Chief Obidiego back, so let's get to him so he can respond to what you had raised previously and perhaps subsequently.
You can imagine him doing, the propaganda, and he's accusing of the one. What are we talking about? An airport that will have the approval of NCAA, an airport that NCAA has test run. That is what he's calling propaganda. He is the one doing propaganda. You see, the politicization is being done by APC, and they have to stop that. If you want to run an election, sell your candidate. We have the very best candidate. The best thing that has happened to Anambra State is having Professor Chukwuma Soludo as the gubernatorial candidate, and they're doing everything possible to ensure that we don't hold this election in Anambra State. Going through the back door, making the Nicodemus moves. Anambra people are already expectant of this event. We have about 5 past presidents who have confirmed that they are coming, to attend this, commissioning. Anambra people are excited. Over 30 years of working towards getting an airport. Today we have it, and instead of this, people going to do their campaign, they are politicizing everything. Afam, wouldn't you want to land at this airport Wouldn't
this is within the purview of federal authorities to take that decision. And he says the governor says they were going to commission that before he leaves office. He's not leaving office day after tomorrow, so he's wondering why the rush to commission it.
There's no rush. There's no rush. It is no rush. The airport has been tested and certified okay. And this is an opportune time for us to commission the airport. We don't have to wait until the time that it favors them. It favors us to commission the airport now, and there's nothing wrong about now.
Is the airport in use at the moment?
We are afraid of the advantages that will accrue to APGA should we commission the airport now. There's no issue about the timing of the commissioning of the airport.
Okay, but could you tell us, is the airport in use at the moment?
Yes, the airport, well, it is the commissioning that is the issue, right? The governor has landed at that airport. He has been test run and confirmed, okay, is now the commissioning so that will commercialize the airport.
So what is it with the commissioning? If the airport is in use, if it's in use, but the party wants to commission it, that's the bone of contention, isn't it?
Commissioning of the airport. And let me add that you have 2 flights fully booked. Lagos, Anambra, Abuja, Anambra, Airpeace,
all right,
fully booked. We have our brothers, Obi Jackson, Obi Kubano.
Okay, gentlemen, pardon me for butting in like this because we need to wrap up soon because we have another matter coming up shortly. Honorable Ogene, now the thing is, if the airport is in use and they had all that clearance from the federal authorities for the airport to be in use, why then are they saying don't commission the airport if they don't want to deprive them or deny them of the political capital?
That would be a question for them to answer. But for me and the good people of Anambra, just yesterday, trailers, nobody could move, past the government house from Amansi. There is a big traffic snare leading up to Aroma. The late Professor Ali Mazuri of the Triple Heritage fame, in one of his documentaries, did talk about when people are trying to get to the moon, Africans are trying to get to their villages. That is the typical situation we are in Anambra State. Yeah, when you land at the airport, how do you even get to your village?
Okay, Honorable Ogene, let me jump in now because we're winding down in less than 2 minutes. If it's really for security reasons, as Mr. Bidegu says that the NSA's office has said, because we haven't seen that communication here, so we can't independently verify that. So if that were the case, or assuming without considering that that was the case, or that is the case, they deployed, as we read, the combination of 100 AIGs, CPs, and all those personnel to Anambra State. And then they spoke about over 34,000 police officers deployed to Anambra State. So if it's for security, if you have all those personnel there, if that place isn't secure now, I wonder where else will be.
Chamberlain, you can see that Chido is my friend of over 2 decades, but you see him struggling. I don't go into conjectures. Who has said that these are security concerns? He should have quoted maybe an NCA official or a security personnel who has given reasons why the commissioning is not taking place. So they are just playing politics with this issue. And for us, we are focused on the campaigns that strain Anambra, but they're always dragging politics of propaganda.
Interesting, Honorable Ogene. I'm just wondering, and this question is for you as well. The elections in the same Anambra State is in just a few days to that particular commissioning that's said to be on suspension now. If, according to reports, the NSA is quoting security concerns, will the security concerns also affect the elections of November 6th?
Again, I'm not a security personnel, but we are hopeful because these elections take place in the villages, in communities. and there is relative peace in those areas. Yes, we can have security fears in urban centers, but I'm sure that with security presence in these urban areas where the elections can jolly.
Mr. Obidiego, briefly, if you can, because we need to go. So, in spite of all that is going on, do you think that the airport will go ahead as scheduled for the commissioning?
You know, that the reason that is being given regarding the commission of this airport is security. Why are you going to be talking about security when we have about 34,000 security men posted to Anambra in preparation for the election? About 10,000 military men posted to Anambra regarding the election.
Yeah, the question is, if you can respond to that pointedly, do you think that the party, the government will go ahead with the commissioning, all of this notwithstanding?
We want to go ahead, and I want to call on Mr. President. Stop them from doing
oh dear.
I want to call on the National Security Advisor to stop all this that they are doing.
All right.
I'm calling on other sub-nationalities in Nigeria, the Yorubas, Pandef, Afenifere, and the rest of them, to speak. They need to speak up. This is intimidation.
Let's not ethnicize the matter. Well, we don't have to ethnicize the matter. There are issues, so they should speak to the issues. So I think the relevant professional groups are saddled with that responsibility, may be the ones saddled with that responsibility. So I'm not sure it would be a good idea to attach other. All right. Well, thank both of you, gentlemen, Mr. Chidi Obidiegu and Honorable Afam Ogene. Thank you both for talking to us this morning. All right, we'll turn our attention now to electricity matters. Ayo, you will do us the honors.
Thanks for staying with us. Power belongs to the people. Yeah. Question is which power? Because, the federal government has unveiled plans to boost electricity supply by wheeling a minimum of 10,000 megawatts of electricity. That's the power we're talking about. Do the people have it? When will the people have it significantly? Well, that's what's on the burner this morning. Ahmed Zakari joins us. He's special advisor to the president on infrastructure. He joins us from our Abuja studio, as well as Dr. Sam Amadi, who is former chairman of NERC. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Well, first of all, let me begin with you, Dr. Amadi. The issues are quite significant, but then the question is, from what you know, what had been the shortfall and how significantly do you think those issues have been addressed?
Literally, and its crisis, major legacy crisis in the sector. So let's start to the current in its organization. But clearly, by the time I left NEC, I did the first inquiry led by late Bamidele Turu, and that inquiry turned out to we had close to maybe less or close to 40% of customers who are actually metered. At the last count, I look at NEC's report, we probably between 40 to 45% who are metered customers. So what that means basically, or at most 50%, it means that at least half of our customers are not metered or properly metered at all. So that's what we are faced with. And why does it arise that way? Because three things happen at the same time. One is the financial crisis of the sector, pre and post reform, meant that the discos were not rolling out meter as they ought to. By the regulation of NEC, all customers ought to be metered. In fact, as a matter of fact, if you were to follow the regulations strictly, there'd be no unmetered customer, because the regulation stipulates that the customer has to be connected only with a measuring instrument. But if you follow that, that means we have to disconnect millions of customers who don't have a metering instrument. So we have this because we're not rolling out meter because of financial insolvency. at a point, the incentive became that the operators had more to gain from metering, not metering customers. Of course, we knew that even before.
So, Dr. Mahdi, essentially, it sounds like you're saying that the major issue here is metering the people.
But what led to it is first financial crisis of the discourse before now and after, and secondly, the incentive structure that meant that it's often better to get build the customers without metering. But again, since now we started the reform, the crisis has been that the methodology for metering, its rollout, financing, logistics does not close the gap quick. And in this industry, you're going to have new customers as people build houses, as people urbanize. As we urbanize, we have more customers come to the group and less, and then those who have meter falter, meter spoils, and so it looks like an increasing crisis there.
All right. Well, that's clearly an issue as far as you're concerned, but and it's something that is of concern to the federal government as well, from what we know. Well, let me take this to Mr. Zachary, who is Special Advisor to the President on Infrastructure. Well, it's been a promise that the federal government has made over time, and it seems from what you have heard from the former chairman of NURC, a major issue if government is going to deliver on its promise. How far so far, and how soon?
So I think, thank you for having me this morning. The question around metering is very essential in the sector. And if you notice, it was one of the key areas that the Honorable Minister of Power in his 50-day summary talked about as a continued focal point. But we have to, as Nigerians, appreciate progress and also provide feedback on where we need to improve. So on the first area of appreciating progress, since privatization in 2013, 2014, there has never been a fully funded national metering program. What that meant is that in 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 2020, we allowed the customer growth with our population growth to increase without any stable or clear plan to solve metering, which is the primary basis for the economic viability of the sector. This administration led very aggressively with the National Mass Metering Program. Phase 0, if you imagine, had to overhaul the entire metering infrastructure of the country. Why do I say this? Prior to the National Mass Metering Program, a maximum of only 200,000 meters had ever been rolled out in 1 year in Nigeria since privatization. With the National Mass Metering Program now, in just about 10 months, we've rolled out almost 1 million meters. What does that mean? We increased the capacity of the market to absorb meters by a multiple of 5. That requires significant heavy lifting. When we started the National Mass Metering Program, you could imagine even trained meter installers were a problem. We started with only a capacity per month of 10 to 12,000 meters that could be installed. But we've now come through, and in some months we've done up to 100,000 meters. Now we're going into the second phase, or as we call it, phase 1, and we'll roll out another 4 million meters fully funded. The Ministry of Power is leading on policy direction. We have full financing support to the DISCOs by the Central Bank of Nigeria, facilitated by the Development Finance Department. And as a group, even in my secretariat, we monitor this daily. We know the geolocation of every Nigerian that's been metered. So my point is, the gap continued growing and there was no program. There is a program now. We've significantly ramped up the capacity. And we believe that into next year, with this program to only fund local meter manufacturers, the job impacts that you're going to see both on installation and manufacturing are going to be a game changer.
All right, let's talk about...
We're very happy with the progress, but we know we need to do more.
Okay. Let me bring you, Dr. Amadi, on this, because this national mass metering program, there was a MAP scheme before this one. You say you had to overhaul that, which suggests that the previous program was not good enough. So, Dr. Amadi, you were there at the time. So how come the MAP scheme wasn't good enough?
I hold the view that CAPME, the Created Advanced Meter Metering Program, is still the best program, and that's why I signed up. What does that mean? There are three problems. If you want to solve a problem in public works, you diagnose what is the problem, what fits into that problem, what are the incentive structure, the economic incentives that have that problem. So the problem of metering is first financing. Second is logistics, like he pointed out. Do you have the meter manufacturers, installers trained, ready to scale up? And the third problem is the economic incentive. Who cares about metering? Why would the operator invest in metering? Okay, now, CAPME says, look, the best way is to crowdsource financing, meaning let's ask the consumers who want to be first on the line to pay for it. And the structure was very clear. We got bulk certification by the Nigerian Bureau for Public Procurement, so there's no problem of procurement. They certified us. We certified all installers, all manufacturers, and importers, fully certified, so that the DISCO has no problem certifying. It has to choose from the list. And the customers pay into an escrow, where in 14 days, the installer who has incentive to roll out more meters, because the more he installs, the more he gets paid, would go to that install, knowing that the money is out of the DISCO's control. So that system would have worked well. It needed to be monitored like they're doing now. But the minister then, Fashola, removed and brought MAP, which I said then that MAP would fail, because MAP is trying to insert manufacturers into the business operations of DISCOs with the attendant risk and mistrust, and therefore it collapsed. I wasn't surprised. Now, this new initiative is good. It's good because government is dealing with one aspect, which is financing and the logistics. Well, it's very good. But again, the report from feedback from operators and from consumers that the DISCOs actually are using this meter plan to remove bad meters and optimize revenue, not as much as closing the gap. So if, for example, you come to Abuja, it's a distribution territory, and they have meters they think are either not running well, tampered, or poor meters, and they first phase them out. What that means that they are increasing chances of controlling revenue maximization. But again, they're not as quickly as they're rolling out to mitigate rate impact of exposed customers, who the volumetric impact of tariff increase for those who are unmetered is that they cannot conserve power, mitigate their volumetric impact, and reduce costs for themselves. So primarily, I think it's a good idea what the government is doing, and I commend what they do. But I think that probably they need to go back to CAPME and unlock crowdfunding. And the beauty of CAPME, which we did, was that CAPME destroys the incentive not to meter, because it's not in the DISCO's hand to say we don't meter. The metering speed is driven by how much customers contribute, how quickly they contribute, and how the installers want to make more money. And these installers are certified technically, certified commercially, so they want to roll out more meters. So this new plan, the central bank is funded, is good. But again, it's the DISCOs who are now inserted again in the control room. So because these are debts they are going to pay for when it's a debt that will mature. So they are in charge. They are going to have financial liability. So they roll out at their own ease and to mitigate more of revenue crisis rather than customer crisis. Okay,
very quick one, Dr. Amadi. How many programs concerning this metering program have we had in how many years?
Well, I think all I know is before now, there was also before we came what they call the meter maintenance fee, which was a very fraudulent way of collecting money to maintain a meter that doesn't exist. But from our own time, we only had CAPME, and then we now have MAP. MAP, essentially, let's not forget, MAP is trying to create a subsidiary economic activity around meter provision.
Okay.
It's called services. So it's then now have this government plan can go with any of these plans. The what government is doing actually very wisely is to bridge the funding gap and help DISCOs to meter the customer as a way of controlling debt overhang, reducing debt, as well as customer satisfaction. I think it's a good idea,
Well,
but it needs to be
yeah.
strengthened against.
Okay. All right, so, Dr. Wadi. Mr. Zachary, I think the challenge here is that of, well, it sounds like the challenge is that of stability and continuity. I mean, I've heard, like, how many programs now? CAPME, MMM, MAP, MMF, okay, whatever it is. So the challenge there is sounding like, unless people can have confidence in a sustained program, we may not be able to run out of this issue. From one of the, you opened by talking about the 50-day press statement of the Minister of Power, and he's talking about a need to rejig some things in the power sector value chain. How sustainable is the program that we're having on our hands now to achieving this goal that government has? Because it would seem like unless, government is able to see some track record within a short time, we may change this program again. What's the plan to ensure sustainability of this particular program so that there is a little bit more incentive when people see that there is continuity?
I think first and foremost, what is required is policy direction and alignment within policymakers on what needs to be done. This national mass metering program, as it is, has very clear policy direction. Mr. President is of the mind and has made it clear through his statements that we do not believe that Nigerians should pay for meters, especially when in the financial model for cost recovery for a disco, those meter fees are already factored in. What we've done is to say that we're going to provide liquidity as loans to discos for them to be able to meet their obligations. Secondly, we have to look at the results. I mean, I don't think anybody will espouse that we should continue to do things that don't work. As I've told you, if we are fair and objective about our assessment, maximum number of meters ever executed under any program, 200,000 a year. In 10 months, we did 1 million. We're going to close this metering gap by the end of the life of this administration. The regulator, based on that policy directive, has actually set out a new set of guidelines, one that ensures that there's a clear trajectory on how we execute this phase 1 of the National Mass Metering Program, which is the second phase with local meter manufacturers. And then, as we've said, the central bank and the financial institutions are providing the liquidity. And then we're monitoring this very actively with the Ministry of Power and some of the other offices that are involved in this and NERC. But we have to do what works. And since we're having a program that is having success, we're going to continue along that. And lastly, I'll say we must domesticate these industries. So when the central bank governor came out and said that we will only fund local meter manufacturers, what this says is that the sustainability is there. Nobody's going to come and install meters and run away. When you have a local manufacturer, a local installer, we know where to go when this doesn't work. So, 1 million meters in 10 months and complete overhaul on training and other things has been a huge task, but we're up to the task. And the next round, a very ambitious target of 4 million meters, will also execute that.
Well, everyone is definitely looking forward to that, Mrs. Zachary. But you began this session by talking about formidable policy direction. So, advise those who have paid in the previous programs, CAPME, what's going to happen to the investments those ones have made? There are those, I know 1 or 2 people who have paid a lot of money to the tune of 100,000 naira for 1 meter. One of them at least has said. So what's going to happen to those ones? Join that with this conversation we had with the MD of MoMA's meter manufacturing company that talked about the fact that government might be going back to the MAP program as well in the event that maybe one fails or for one reason or the other. Put us through on that so that at least people are clear on the policy direction and the program to follow.
Okay, I think one of the things we've done is to review the regulatory framework, and we must commend NERC for doing a very robust job and setting out the new regulatory guidelines that incorporate NMMP, talk about the condition of maps, as well as funding by suppliers for meters. So those guidelines have been out there, available on NERC's website, but I'll summarize directly related to your questions. One was this point of those who paid in the past. As we've said, the obligation to meter is on the distribution companies. Anyone who has paid, there's very clear guidelines on how they will get a credit back on their meter that will reduce the cost of their periodic top-up of credit. And that's been mandated, and it's in the regulatory guidelines. So I'd like to clearly state here for Nigerians that the guidelines are that if you've paid, that money will be returned. Secondly, our main government program is the National Mass Metering Program, and the intent of government is that everyone should get a meter without paying for it. But the regulator also recognized that we have to be a nation of rules and laws. So what was done was to say, if a MAP has an existing contract to supply meters to a disco at a process where consumers that don't want to wait for the NMMP would like to buy, that they can continue that. And it was because we had some legal cases that were coming up, some challenges, and MAPs were saying that NMMP, despite them having a supply contract with the disco, will come and wipe that out. But this raises another question, which I'm sure you will bring up, which is the concept of, can people take free meters and be selling them? So with NEMSA, and we had a very robust conversation last week with the labor leaders who have been part and parcel of designing and directing this program as part of our joint FGN and Labor Committee on Electricity Reform. NEMSA came and they had to explain to us that for the seals, after they certify meters, once they come in before they go to a consumer, all the NMMP meters will be sealed with NMMP tag. So a consumer knows that this is not a meter that anybody should ever ask you for money for. And then if there's a MAP meter that a particular supplier has brought in and said this is for sale for any consumer that doesn't want to wait for NMMP, then that will also be appropriately tagged. But as I said, we anticipate that 90% of all meters that are going to come will come from NMMP.
Well, Zachary,
but for some consumers that may want to go ahead, there is that small window with the maps. But also the map pricing is going to be tied to whatever the competitive price for NMMP is.
Right, you ended up answering that question. I mean, you asked it and you answered it. But the challenge here is, I mean, can't one tag for the NMMP be used on the map or otherwise? But we're running out of time, and you know the issue around the power sector is always a lot, really, before we start unknotting it. Just two quick things I want you to respond to briefly before I take this back to Dr. Amadi. You have set that ambitious target that you will close a metering gap before the life of this administration runs out. What exactly is the gap? How many people do not have meters right now? Or how many households, as the case may be?
So the challenge with anything is, you know, with time, there's a dynamic growth that will happen in the population. And at the time this program was started, we had a 6 million metering gap. 1 million deployed through phase 0, 4 million will be deployed through phase 1, and then we'll have another program at the World Bank that we're working on that will cover another 1 million that is running in parallel, all under this NMMP guideline. But we do know that in the population of consumers, there are still meters that are bad. Dr. Amadi raised that need to be replaced. And then with customer enumeration, the number is growing. But what will happen is, once you have a localized industry that with vibrant meter manufacturers and more robust discos, any additional gap from increased enumeration, the industry should be able and will be able to cover it. But the number that we targeted, which was 6 million, we will achieve that target through the phases of the NMMP. And
are you saying remnants, that because obviously the number of unmetered Nigerians is 6 million?
We believe that the market will catalyze it.
Can you hear me? Is the number of unmetered Nigerians 6 million?
So that's what I explained to you. The number of unmetered Nigerians at the start of NMMP was 6 million.
What is it now?
Can I tell you that the number will stay stagnant? It won't stay stagnant. So what I'm saying is, at the end of the life of the program, you can imagine that new customer growth, there'll still be
so we don't know what it is now. Is that the point?
Outside of that 6 million. Say that again?
We don't know what the figure is now.
No, I think with additional enumeration, perhaps there might be an additional 2 million customers that have come into the landscape. And that's, as I said, number may continue to evolve. But the 6 million target, that was 100% of the gap. If you imagine that can be closed within the life of the administration, any additional unmetered populations, will have to look at that from a policy
6 million,
perspective.
2 million,
But
that's 8 million, as it were.
If you start out...
200 million?
So,
perhaps.
Well, okay, so let's take this to Dr. Amadi. So for a lot of Nigerians watching, I mean, the simple solution to this is having electricity. I mean, having power constantly. I mean, we could talk about this all through the day, but I mean, if we don't see that solution or speak to it, then perhaps we've not done justice to this topic. So is this the silver bullet, metering everyone? Is it the silver bullet to ending the crisis in the power sector?
Metering is important. Metering goes more to justice, revenue protection. It doesn't create additional power. Well, it can create additional power if customers conserve power, and we argue that if you save 1 megawatt, that goes back. But the critical issue here I want to bear in mind. First, localizing it's a good idea. I did the local content law, and I'm happy that. Bear in mind that many of these local producers are basically merchants who, that's the problem we have. They're going to be working with the discos and probably creating meters that are going to be bad quickly, and then they are using the metering plan to remove and reinstall meters. And so the metering gap, like you said, keep expanding. The second point to be in mind here is if there's power, if you have enough power, generated power, enough distribution capacity to wield them and to serve customers, and you still have unmetered customers, it's bearable. First, if customers are getting power, what makes estimated billing dangerous and provocative is that you are not getting power and you are being billed. So 3 problems here, or solutions you can offer. Well, let's keep ramping up capacity, especially in the distribution sector, where we can deliver more power to the customer. Change management. These discos, in fact, we have what we call methodology for estimated billing. Even if you don't close out the train gap, which I doubt this government's best effort, you can still have a disciplined sector. The regulator enforces a methodology for estimation. It's not rocket science. You can even estimate customers who are metered for a short period of time through some level of technology. Again, the third issue, very important here, is that
just a quick one, right?
Avoid too much.
Okay, we need to go in the next 30, 60 seconds, if you don't mind. So, is it that the metering, the number of unmetered Nigerians or households is 6 million, maybe plus 1 or 2 million if there's further enumeration. Is that the actual figure?
No, it's not. Nobody knows. Because let me tell you, the discourse are contended that the figure is high. We don't, observers say it's actually low. That this discourse, that's why we asked them to do a GIS scientific customer elimination for the past 4 years. It has not been done. When we gave them 6 months, they say it's too short and we'll.
But that also means that the NERC, but the NERC does not have the capacity to verify the information given to them by the discourse. As you see with the telecom sector, telecom sector has the capacity.
Exactly. You need to generate quality. You need to have generate quality data at the disco level. The NERC will simply go through it. But the problem is that they need to have scientific basis to do that, and they are either reluctant or saying the cost implication of running a very scientific data analysis and capture of all their customers would be very high. So the regulator needs to mandate it. But I think we're getting there. Let's work with the 8 million that Zachary says.
Well, gentlemen,
6,000. Yeah,
well, it's an endless conversation. It sounds to me more like giving power to the people. We have to give power to the people on the terms of those who have the power. That's the way it's sounding right now. Please don't quote me on that one. But it also perhaps underscores the fact that there is a need for us to be precise about the number of households, depending on whose definition you're looking at, because the NPC's definition of household is completely different. Gentlemen, we expect that we'll have more on this and hopefully call you back some other time to have this conversation. Ahmed Zachary, Special Advisor to the President on Infrastructure, thank you so much for your time and information this morning, as well as Dr. Sam Amadi, former Chairman, NERC. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time this morning.
Let's jump right. The first of your messages, and this one is coming through from famous Timilai. Well, interesting name there. It says, it's becoming clear where our problems are coming from as a country. As my people used to say, if you can't rule or control your house, it's very difficult or impossible for you to rule a community. Our politicians and political parties have no focus. We need serious and immediate overhaul of our political system.
Take a look at this one from Festus Akimboyewa. The level of internal party democracy in our country will continue to be absent as long as ordinary members are not allowed to elect their party leaders fairly and transparently, participate in conference and policy making and selection of candidates for election. Sadly, all our political parties have these deficiencies.
The definition of a Nigerian political party is the collection of strange bedfellows, says Olorun Loba. They are not really men with the interests of the nation at heart. Many politicians are just political contractors. That's why an individual would deem it fit to take his party to court. Hardly find this happening in other parts of the world, and they can always find a loophole in the Nigerian law and indeed the judiciary to sway decisions to their favor.
This one is from Dan about the power sector. He says, the power sector of Nigeria is the heartbeat of the economy. For Nigerian economy to be competitive, its power sector should be fixed. To remedy the situation, we need to move towards renewable energy sources. However, complete development of solar plants is inevitable. Investment in new grid infrastructure is necessary to facilitate integration of intermittent sources. Integrate mini-grids into disco networks to supply power to underserved areas. Well, yeah, there are several other recommendations, so will be interesting. So, that is it today, and it's good to know that some states are using gas rather than rely on regular power supply. So, well, that's it. What a week it's been. We thank you all for your time as well. We'll see you next time. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
I'm Kayode Okikilo.
And I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful week.